Hello, I am Marco Davis, President and CEO of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. Welcome to our 2021 Leadership Conference, kicking off our signature Hispanic Heritage Month events. Thank you all for joining us from near and far. We look forward to staying connected with you. This year, our theme, Presente, Latinos Leading the Way, is an affirmation of our strength, our perseverance, and the essential role we play in the nation. As more of us assume leadership roles, not only will we be able to overcome the challenges our communities and the country face, but also the more our lasting presence will be recognized and our brilliance applied to bring about positive change. For the next few days, you will be part of some dynamic, thought-provoking discussions about some of the critical issues impacting all of us. We've invited some of the most respected experts and thought leaders in their fields to talk about a wide variety of topics and challenges that are foremost on our minds. In a bit, we'll kick off with our opening plenary, Presente, Latinas Leading the Way, to explore Latina leadership, and we'll end the day with a conversation on new narratives for Latinos in American media. In between, we'll talk about work, small business, education, health, and much more. While we're not physically in the same room to greet each other, we have dedicated a few times during our all-virtual conference for you to connect with each other. After our first plenary, we'll have a cafecito networking break, where you'll be able to engage directly with other attendees. Our highly successful pitch competition that debuted last year is back, and you'll learn about this year's entrants, remarkable Latino leaders who have adapted their local businesses, founded or led nonprofits, or led community efforts, as well as who the winners are tomorrow. And our career fair, providing Hispanic leaders at all career stages a chance to explore new opportunities and job openings in their field, will take place next week on Tuesday, September 28th. Watch for more details about it throughout the conference. Finally, because we know that while it's absolutely important to focus on the serious issues facing the nation and our community, it's also critical to feed our souls. I am excited to let you know about a new conference offering this year. Throughout the week, we'll take occasional breaks in between sessions to bring you some content that focuses on our community's contributions in the realm of the arts, demonstrating both how powerfully some of our own can move us, and also to underscore what a vital role the arts play in our culture and American society. Remember that there is still time to invite your colleagues and friends to join us at the conference. It's free to participate. They just need to register. And make sure to join us for what will be an amazing culmination of the week. On Thursday evening, we will hold our 44th Annual Awards Gala, also on this virtual platform. We have a stellar lineup of some very special guests, a tribute to some of our community's most distinguished leaders, and a celebration of the resilience and perseverance of our community. Celebrated journalist, author, motivational speaker, and entrepreneur, Mariana Atencio will be our MC. Be sure to follow us all week on social media using the hashtag CHCIHHM21. Finally, I want to send a special thank you to all our sponsors and community partners, especially our conference host sponsor, Facebook. We are grateful and appreciate your support, your energy, and your participation. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce a distinguished leader whom I have the honor of working closely with. Congressmember Nanette Diaz-Barragan was elected to Congress in 2016 as the first Latina ever chosen to represent California's 44th Congressional District. She has had a remarkable career as an advocate and public servant. She now serves on the House Committee on Homeland Security, where she chairs the Subcommittee on Border Security, Facilitation and Operations, and serves on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. She is a member of the Progressive Caucus and first vice chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. And of course, she is also the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. Please welcome Congressmember and Chair Barragan.
Welcome to the CHCI Leadership Conference opening plenary, Presente, Latinas Leading the Way. This session is possible due to the gracious contributions from our sponsors, Facebook, Capital One, Emily's List, Entergy Corporation, and Mastercard. Our panel chair for today's session is Representative Nanette Diaz-Barragan, who represents California's 44th District and is the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. She serves on the House Committee on Homeland Security and the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. We will also hear welcome remarks from Johanna Silva Wacky, Vice President for Training and Community Engagement at Emily's List, where she oversees partnership, community engagement, and training programs which help to expand and diversify the pipeline of women running for public office. Our moderator, Amanda Renteria, is the CEO of Code for America. Her diverse career includes the financial industry, education, and public service. She was named one of the most influential staffers by Roll Call and received a number of awards as the first Latina Chief of Staff in the history of the U.S. Senate. Please welcome our opening speaker, Representative Nanette Diaz-Barragan.
Thank you, Marco, for that gracious introduction. I am honored and humbled to serve as the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, and I'm delighted to work alongside the organization's dedicated staff, alumni, and program participants, as well as our board and advisory council members. Together, we are working to advance and support CHCI's mission to develop the next generation of Latino leaders and to ensure that our voices are represented in all sectors of the workforce. As the chair of CHCI, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the 2021 Leadership Conference. This is the largest gathering of Latino leaders in the nation during Hispanic Heritage Month. We appreciate all of you, our conference attendees and panelists, for joining us on this journey of learning and exchange of ideas. Our theme for this panel is Presente, Latinas Leading the Way, spotlighting female leaders, elected officials, policymakers, and influencers recognized for their vision, expertise, and influence in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. We want to say a special thank you to Emily's List. Emily's List has been very supportive of this session, and we are thankful for their continued commitment to engaging women in politics. Their Latina Advisory Council is working to increase the number of Latinas in elected office. Let's give a big round of applause for the tremendous work they do. This year, we are placing a particular focus on the women in our community, the mothers, daughters, grandmothers, sisters, aunts, cousins, and friends who are the backbone as well as the heart of who we are as a people. Over the past few decades, Latinas have grown into a powerful force as key part of our nation's economic engine. According to the UCLA Latino Policy and Politics Initiative, prior to the pandemic, the Latina workforce was projected to grow by a stunning 25.8% from 2019 to 2029. Yet, Latinas continue to face barriers to inclusion and success in the workplace and are severely underrepresented in positions of leadership. Due to COVID-19, nearly 3 million American women have left the labor force over the past year, which exacerbates and reflects persistent challenges women face, including pay inequity, undervalued work, and outdated notions of caregiving. Before the pandemic, women made up more than 50% of the country's workforce, but that number has dropped sharply as many women, particularly mothers of young children, have been furloughed or laid off. Many others have had to choose between showing up at frontline jobs or caring for their children who, with daycare centers closed and school underway remotely, would otherwise be left without supervision. As is clear, much needs to be done to get Latinas back on track. During this panel discussion, you will hear from an engaging array of panelists who will share their insights and strategies to attract, grow, and retain Latina talent across all sectors. The kind of change that must happen in order for our community to move forward. Again, we appreciate you and your participation in this conference, and we look forward to your feedback.
Hello, I'm Johanna Silvawaki, Vice President for Training and Community Engagement at Emily's List. And I'm thrilled to be joining you today, along with Congresswoman Nanette Barragan, who Emily's List proudly supported in her campaigns for Congress. As a Latina immigrant working in politics, I know too well the barriers Latinas face when running for office. At Emily's List, we know that electing Latina leaders requires intentional and hard work. And that work matters now more than ever because representation matters in government, in business, in the nonprofit sector. When Latinas have a seat at the table, we are all better off. This is why Emily's List is proud to support and to celebrate leaders like Harris County, Texas Judge Lina Hidalgo, the first woman and first Latina to be elected Harris County Judge, and the Emily's List winner of the 2021 Gabrielle Giffords Rising Star Award. Judge Hidalgo has promoted innovative efforts to improve voting access, prioritized health, housing, and jobs. Like Judge Hidalgo, Latina leaders across our country have stepped up to fight for their communities with courage and compassion, especially during these trying times. Latinas are breaking barriers, bringing diverse cultural identities and policy ideas to every level of government and strengthening our democracy. There is no doubt Latinas are resilient, and Latina leadership in government and organizations make our country more resilient too. And so this opening panel, a discussion of strategies to attract, grow, and retain Latina talent across all sectors is absolutely vital. On behalf of Emily's List, I'm grateful for the opportunity to join you today and to hear from all the leaders CHCI has brought together. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amanda Renteria. I am the CEO of Code for America. For those unfamiliar with Code for America, we partner with governments and community organizations leveraging technology so that government programs and services reach all communities. In fact, most recently, we were the only mobile app for families to apply to the new Advanced Child Tax Credit, and we did it in English and Spanish. We know how important it is to reach all communities. And so I'm honored to be here today to lead this important discussion. I want to thank Congresswoman Nanette Diaz-Barragan for her opening remarks and for setting a great tone for our conversation and her leadership in Congress. It is not lost on me that we are opening today with Latinas Lead as our plenary session. And so it's really exciting and no surprise that it's a Latina leading the way and calling out that this is a pretty good place to start. I also want to thank Johanna Silvawaki, Vice President of Emily's List, for her welcome. There's no doubt that representation matters. We've known this for a long time, and Latinos, Latinas, we need to be at the table if we really want to unleash the true potential of the entire community. And thank you to CHCI for hosting this leadership conference and shining a spotlight on the important topic of Latina leadership. Please feel free to tweet your comments about this session at hashtag CHCIHHM21. We want to make sure everyone out there is engaged, is knowing what is happening here, and is making sure just to lift up Latino, Latina, Latinx voices out there. So as I was thinking about this plenary session, as I was thinking about CHCI conference this year, I couldn't help but run across a headline that reads, "The new Latino landscape, the swift growth of U.S. Latinos is reshaping big states and small towns." We know places like California, New Mexico, half the population is Latino under 18. But we're also seeing growth like Utah was the fastest growing Latino population in the West. We've seen increases in Latino population like 29% since 2010 in places like Vermont, or 19.6% in Arizona, Oklahoma, Texas. And when we think about the culmination of that, and you think about the industries that are really going to shape our country as we move forward, there are a couple that come to mind. Number one, technology. Number two, financial institutions. Number three, policy, community empowerment. And when you think about those four aspects, today we've got a couple voices in this same space. And so it's really exciting for me to be able to open this panel with incredible leaders in those kinds of industries in a world where we are bigger numbers now, where we do need leaders in these kinds of categories so that we are shaping not just this country and this community, but the world to really understand who the Latino community is, how Latina leadership has come about, and how we do more of it at a time when our country needs our voice at the table. And so with that, I am delighted to be joined by three experts on this topic. First, please welcome Careless Barrios, Head of Commercial Closing and Loan Operations for the Commercial Bank at Capital One. She is responsible for the leadership and management of a staff of 207 associates. Let me say that again, 270, associates, providing operational coverage for 32 products and business lines. Prior to Capital One, she held leadership positions with Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs. Carellis, thanks. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be part of this panel, and how powerful it is to be in a panel where you can pronounce my name as Carellis Barrios. In addition to my role at Capital One, I'm also really honored to be extremely active and committed to Capital One's business resource groups, such as our Hispanic resource group, HOLA. And in 2018, I was asked to be the Long Island market president, and it was really Capital One working to continue to elevate Latina leaders. I'm thrilled to be here. And then I'll share, I'm recently relocated to Dallas, Texas from Brooklyn, New York, where my husband and I are really blessed to have two troublemaking, very rambunctious boys. Thank you again for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. And if we see the boys, we'll just wave. Next, let's welcome Zarya Dafya Hadley, the manager of public policy for Facebook's external affairs team. She envisions proactive engagement strategies and programs between Facebook and the national advocacy groups that help support communities in various ways that make them a reality. Zarya is a member also of the CHCI board, so has been a huge part of this leadership. Zarya, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Amanda. It's really an honor. This is always, as you know, my favorite time of year. It's just so important that we come together as a community. And I'm so proud to be able to work in a place where I can really go back to my roots and support organizations that I care so much about, like CHCI, as you said, and also help, as you mentioned, a sector where it's important that we continue to have a voice heard, right, to work in such a sector. And now I'm proudly also co-chairing the global Latina ERG in Facebook. So just really excited about being able to have those two different ways to impact our community internally and externally.
It's fantastic. And I'm not surprised to hear that there's more to the story always as you introduce Latina leaders. Next, I am pleased to introduce Mercedes Garcia, the Vice President of Community Relations for Mastercard. She is responsible for developing relationships with community organizations via the Master Your Card financial education program. Mercedes has been with Mastercard for 27 years, the last 10 of which she has devoted to financial empowerment and to being Mastercard's spokesperson for financial education programs for the Hispanic community, the African American community, youth, and other underserved groups. Mercedes, thank you for joining us.
Aquí presente. Buenos días. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here with these wonderful Latinas. And yes, as you said, I work for Mastercard, the technology company, focused on community relations and especially focused on financial equity and financial education. So important these days. And I work with community organizations like CHCI and many others but especially with underserved people, to help them understand the importance of financial education and also how to manage their money better through leveraging technology. So thank you so much. Very excited to be here.
Thank you, Mercedes. We had one other panelist for you today, Diana Rodriguez, President and CEO of Entergy New Orleans. Unfortunately, she had to cancel to continue dedicating her full attention to recovery efforts after Hurricane Ida and returning power to residents. We send our best wishes to her and speedy recovery to the people of Louisiana. But it simply is another reminder that Latina leadership is everywhere. When we first got on that call and Diana's like, "Hi, I'm here. I wanted to be with you, mujeres. And here's what I'm doing." And all of us looked at her and said, "Go do what you need to do. We're here for you. Do what you have to do." But it is a reminder that we are on the front lines of so many things happening today. And so it's with that I am excited to be able to have this kind of conversation. And of course, you're in good hands with this excellent panel group. And we'd love to see your questions. So please feel free to type your questions into the chat box, and we'll certainly get to those. But I want to start out asking each of our panelists today. I gave you a little bit of their resume, but I'd love to hear how you introduce yourself, your organization, but really share with us what you define as your secret to advancement. And so we will start with Careless.
Wow, secret to advancement. I mean, does anyone actually have a secret to it? If they do, I want to know everyone's secrets, because I don't think it's a magic recipe. I really think, advancement, and I know we're not supposed to say the word luck, but it takes a little bit of luck. And I say a little bit of luck because my luck comes from many years and a lot of hard work by other people that do not just involve me. I have the luck first to be in this country when so many Latinos do not have the opportunities to succeed in businesses because their countries just don't provide those opportunities. And then for me, it's been a dedication to learning a lot. So education to me has been the key to be able to be in this role. And not only like traditional education, but also continuing to refine what that education is. So I've had to continue to learn throughout my career and not stop doing that. So I'd say the secret is a lot of learning and a lot of gratitude for, where I come from and how I've gotten here.
That's great, Careless. Zarya, how about you?
Yeah, I would second some of the things Careless said, right? Certainly, I think it takes a village. But, I'll share that I come from a trajectory where my career was not linear, has not been linear, right? So the traditional thought of what you would see as a successful attorney, for example, I'm an attorney by trade, or GR professional or what have you. In my case, I sort of switched career tracks along the way from being an attorney to working in policy on the Hill, to being a leader in the nonprofit space, to now corporate America. But I would say throughout that, the common theme and the common denominator was my passion for advocating for our community and commitment to that cause, right? So I think that what has allowed me to be able to change tracks in that way is certainly one, that passion for what I'm doing. So being inspired to work in something in which, you're really inspired about it, and you can explain the why for what you're doing. I think being a great listener is really important. And I don't mean that just in terms of listening to others, but to yourself too, right? So listen to that gut and to yourself when you feel something is right or when it's not. I feel that, especially as Latinas, we often tend to suppress that, right? So to not do that, but to listen to yourself. And in a work context, in a professional setting, to really identify listen to your colleagues into the organization and your business unit or your organizational leaders. Sort of what is the need? Where is the current going, and how can you best advance it, right? And you're using your skill set and bringing your superpowers to that space. So I think just being able to tune in and identify what others' priorities are and supporting them to advance them as a team for the broader goal, I think is incredibly important. And finally, to trust yourself, like I said, your gut, and to speak up at all times. You can speak up confidently and authentically. And I encourage everyone to do that as they build their village.
That's great. And Mercedes,
Well, very similar to Soraya as well. I didn't have a linear career. I worked in hospitality and then in advertising many years, and now at Mastercard. I think there's not a secret. There's many secrets, and that changes every day sometimes based on the possibilities and the opportunities that you have. What is a constant, I would say, is to take risks, to be open to take risks, to be flexible, to be persistent and focus on the possibilities, not on your insecurities, on what can go wrong or what you thought you lacked at a particular point. For example, for me, I wasn't born in the US. I never lived here before I came with MasterCard. So I thought I didn't have what it needed to be here. And I was asked to come here for 6 months to work in a project in New York. And it has been 23 years and counting. So I think is the secret is to find the secrets every day and be open to be flexible and change and be ready for anything.
I love that. The secret is to find the secrets every day. That's right. And as I hear you all talk about the different paths you've taken and how you figured out a way to navigate things that you weren't sure you would ever do, or that you would see right in front of you, or that weren't clear, they weren't linear. How have you addressed barriers that allow you to succeed and support other Latinas and people of color advance to positions of leadership? Mercedes, we'll start with you.
I think that sometimes the stereotyping creates barriers because people expect you to behave and operate in a way that is consistent with that stereotype or that idea that they have in their heads. So in my case, what helped was being positive, remembering to be a human being to everybody. You never know how the world changes. And also being supportive and volunteering in so many different ways. Because volunteering allowed me to create a network of people that I learned so much from them. And also at some point, they helped me develop my brand. So probably just like this Latina that came from Venezuela at that time, is she ready for the position or not? Who knows? But by networking and being with all of this big number of people, also allowed me to create my brand. And at some point, people knew who I was, knew what to expect, and also opened the opportunity for me to receive feedback and learn every day. And I have supported Latinas and other sisters of colors as well by sharing my journey and saying, don't think about the barriers, just remember si se puede and focus on the possibilities, as I said before. Don't not on the things that can go wrong or on the things that you think you don't have.
That's great. Zarya.
Yeah, I would say that one really important piece to this is, as I said, as you're setting your goals and the things that you'd like to accomplish, and thinking about that, also thinking about who can really you can learn from to make that happen, or who you'd want to work with, right? So in that way, you start building relationships and supporters beyond mentors. I think where, especially as Latinas, we really benefit from having supporters, which to me are people who don't just talk to you and give you advice, but who talk about you positively and promote you and invest, their own personal capital in your success as they talk to others about you. So I think that's incredibly important to identify who those folks are for you. I think also just in doing advocacy, that's also a way to support each other and to give back. So for me, having worked advocating for, especially is when I was in the Hispanic National Bar Association, really that the job was to push for more Latinos in the judiciary and in senior roles in the legal field. So I think just not being afraid to be part of organizations, part of campaigns, to advocate for each other. And I think also it's important to show up in your workplace, right? For example, I invest a lot of times, I mentioned, in the employee resource group at Facebook, because I think it's critical that, again, we learn from each other. We learn where your place of work can be better, and to get support for whatever challenges you are facing. And lastly, things like CHCI, right? The Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute is doing incredible work developing talent through their CHCI fellowships and internships. So I'm incredibly proud to be able to help support Latinos who are going to go on to lead many of these policy discussions themselves. I think that's incredibly important and powerful.
Yeah, and building on that, as we were talking as a group just a couple weeks ago about executive leadership specifically, and thinking about what are we missing from executive leadership today? Why is it often hard for Latinas to ascend to leadership positions? And how do we utilize or overcome our own cultural dynamics as well as bias that impact our growth trajectory? And in that conversation, Carellis had some different ideas. So I want to go to you, Carellis, as you think about executive leadership and what thoughts you have around that.
Thank you. First, I just Mercedes said something that I thought was like really powerful, talking about taking risks and challenges. And when we met a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that we discussed is how scary it is to do something new in our career, whether it's a new project. And one of the things we all came to the realization is that it is in our DNA as Latinas, como Hispanos, to take risks, to do challenges, and to do different things. We are in different countries. We are speaking multiple languages. We are here together. Whether you were not born here or it is your parents, it is in our DNA to take these risks and these challenges. So we are so capable of it. So I encourage you all to take those risks and those challenges, and ask for opportunities, ask for different things, because like Zarya said, it is also extremely powerful to create that advocacy, and we create that advocacy by asking for things and opportunities. And then when it comes to why don't we have the representation that we need at the top, I want to start off by there's so many people listening to this panel, so I encourage you all to immediately reject this idea that there's just not enough qualified Latinas out there. That is wrong. It is incorrect. We need to start recruiting and establish our pipeline from different universities, different places. Remove the ideas of conventional recruiting so we can build a pipeline of rich Latina women, because there's tons of us here in the United States. So that's the first thing I kind of encourage us all to do as employers, and us on this panel, and those of you listening, you can help us all. And then I ask us, in general, just us that, culturally, to think about the own biases that we have in our own culture, the things that we take on, and how those, who we are culturally, how sometimes that holds us back. And what I mean by that, think about your responsibilities at home, the responsibilities that you take on at work, and the measurement of those, because sometimes the biases that we have are internal biases that we create for ourselves as Latinos, and we ourselves also have biases against other Latinos. So it's really important as we move forward, and we're one of the fastest growing demographics, that we start to look at ourselves as una cultura, una gente, and not divide ourselves as Brazilian, Mexican, and Cuban. We are una gente junto. And I think that would be so powerful in how we advance ourselves all together, because together we rise up faster.
That's great. How about Zarya? Thoughts on the overall subject? Carellis brought up a lot of different topics here, so go
and
for
all
it.
incredible topics and absolutely valuable, information and advice. Totally. So I recently actually read a book called Brag Better, and it was so disconcerting to me to read it. I had to really work hard to get through it, because I feel like it's so against our nature, right? And there are real cultural elements to us as Latinas. You're taught that bragging is not appropriate, that it's unattractive, that it's not, you won't be likable, right? And there's truly an art to it. And what you learn, I think, to get up to higher roles, and especially in executive level roles, people don't get there unless they've known how to brag well, right? Known how to brag. What in the book they call there's a qualified quiet, right? That we don't want to be a part of. You want to learn how to really highlight your accomplishments in the appropriate way, through the appropriate channels, to the appropriate people. So there's also where the supporters come in, right? That we all need. So I think that's just culturally something we have to really constantly, I think, work hard to overcome, to get to those next levels and higher challenges and higher levels. The risk taking is crucial, right? Because you can, as Carelli said, you could probably do well where you are, but to get to those senior roles, it's going to take risks, and it's going to take high visibility projects. It's going to take things that if they don't come out exactly, there's going to be potential consequences, but you have to do it and trust yourself and trust your abilities. I think another important skill that executives have is being able to point out strengths and weaknesses in processes and strategies and in people around them, right? And to not be shy about expressing what they need. So I think it's really important that we Latinas learn to express what we need and how we need to be supported. I think we often hold back because we're compelled to walk this likability tightrope, right? So earlier I said listening is a huge asset. And it is, because I think you all have probably also seen the book by Alicia Menendez, The Likability Trap. Highly recommend you read that too. It's amazing to be able to be attuned to what people need and to do that. But when it crosses over into being a challenge or a burden to you, is I think where you need to start assessing what you want and what you need and effectively communicating that, right, for your success. And along those lines, feedback, right? Feedback is a great example of how we often tend to maybe shy away from challenging feedback because we want to be liked. And in the case of negative feedback, I think it's crucially important to take constructive criticism gracefully, right? If it's well intended, well founded, and there's an action to it, right? So if it's specific, if it's going to help you reach your goals, and then yes, act quickly on that feedback to improve if it's meant to serve you. But there's a lot of times when the feedback is not specific, it's very generic, it's and there's really nothing to come out of it other than it's possibly digging you, right? So there, I think, or maybe the reviewer or whoever's giving you this feedback is missing context. So I just encourage everyone, and especially Latinas, to not be afraid to chime in and push back if you feel that a certain feedback is unfair or is missing something, right? So to provide that additional context or to challenge it based on the evidence that you have. I feel like we're often shy to do that, and we shouldn't be.
Thank you, Zarya. Taking this idea of bragging better and moving throughout an organization, Mercedes, I'd love to hear, in your 27 years, because you've moved in different areas within the organization, how have you grappled with the, bragging better or putting yourself in a position where you can move across the organization? What have you been able to do, not only yourself, but then in paving the way for the person behind you so that they too can move across the organization in the same ways? And have you seen it change over time, or are we still fighting for that next thing?
Well, I don't think we're fighting in the same way anymore. And I agree with Careless and Zarya. You need to become a piquito de oro, as they say in Spanish, because if you don't talk about your accomplishments, your skills, what you are able to do, it's people will not, magically read your mind or find out. So that's really, really important. Something that I have seen, especially these days, that it's a little bit concerning, is with so many new rules and standards and sensitivities, and people sometimes being preferring not to talk than saying something wrong. So sometimes what happens is that you don't get the right feedback, or you don't get actionable feedback. To just get like, oh, unfortunately, you are not getting that position. And you're like, okay, why exactly? Give me examples, and what can I do to get there? And many times it is like, you didn't get the position, unfortunately. We were looking for other skills or things like those. And I have seen that, fortunately, never happened to me, but I have helped other friends and colleagues that have been in that position. And in a case that I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, I was the one that, because she was my friend, I had to sit with her and say, okay, this is what's going on. Because you are so bubbly, wonderful, chatty, loud Latina, so nice. This is not about changing who you are. However, look around the people that work in the department that you want to go. Look about how they behave, how they present themselves, all of those things. And you are very smart. You know the information, etc. So have you considered toning down these things, or maybe looking at how you could present yourself in a different way, etc.? And nobody told her ever that. And she tried several times to get to that higher position. Eventually she did. And she was promoted twice. She's a very successful woman, etc. And I could have just gone and say, oh, I'm so sorry you didn't get the position. Or just go, okay, sit down, girl. This is what's going on. This is what I think, and this is how I can help, I think. So it's a tricky line, because you don't want to hurt people. You want to be respectful. You don't want to cross the line, but at the same time, you need to support others and be truthful and transparent. So, yes, Mastercard is very different to when I started, for the good, thank God. But in the corporate world, I continue to see that barrier, to call it in a way, not fully transparent and supportive, actionable feedback.
And I want to work from that, because we are getting, and I'm noticing a lot of questions coming in around this idea of networking and connecting. And one of the questions that came in is, how can Latinas create effective alliances with other women of color and minorities in the workplace? What are things that you have seen to be effective, not only as you sort of start out your career, but as you move up leadership, this networking, connecting aspect? Why is it important? How do you do it? Why don't we start out with Careless?
Because we're all working towards the same goals. So as we network together, we learn from each other, we understand each other's challenges. And there is a strength in a sisterhood of women working towards the same thing. And to me, I'm not just talking about like only moving up the corporate ladder, whether it is learning how to, balance home and work, children, but just, together we learn a lot from each other. And another thing I guess I'd encourage us to do is, we were just talking about, the concept of feedback and mentorship and how hard all that is. I mean, feedback is hard, and people say don't take it personal. I mean, it's personal because it's important to us. So if you create a network, one of the things that I've done, and I've started to do it even more recently in my career, is when I'm presenting or have team meetings or have a project, I've looked to sometimes more junior people than myself to send my work out to or have them join, specifically asking them, could you provide me feedback here? It's extremely powerful when you ask someone more junior than you to give you feedback. They really take it upon as homework, like a true task. And the feedback that comes out, at times, it's so much richer than what you can get from your superiors, because feedback's really hard. And as you move up the corporate ladder, it gets even harder. So in my sisterhood, the networks that I've created internally and externally, that's what I've learned from. I've learned on how to request feedback at different levels, and not from your reporting lines, because you find that what you get back sometimes just doesn't have the corporate speak. It's so much more authentic because it's so clear what they're asking you to do.
That's great. That's beautiful. And I can see, and then also for younger folks, it gives them a window into how are things created as they move up, right?
Oh, 100%. Yes, it goes both ways. Then we help elevate those Latinas, those junior talent. We are giving them opportunities to network with, with someone that maybe they wouldn't interact with.
That's great. And Zarya, you're part of the employee groups at Facebook and outside groups. How do you navigate? What advice do you have?
Absolutely. And I think that's the employee resource group is a huge help and resource. One, as you mentioned, to work across communities and come together for common causes and really support each other, right? Especially the last couple of years that have been so difficult for all of us on so many levels. I've really seen the Facebook family come together and support each other just in incredible ways and across communities. So I think that is really important for that. In terms of the Latino community, and we've seen how crucial the ERG has been to, one, recruiting talent, right? And then also to helping retain talent, because it's very different when it's a huge organization. So when folks come in and they feel like they already sort of have a home and have a bit of a family or a sort of safe space to ask a lot of these questions, right? And to share these ideas, to get this feedback, as has been discussed. So I feel like the ERG plays a really important role in retention and in devising strategies to bring in and grow existing talent. I think our external partnerships are incredibly important too. So that's another reason why I'm very proud to be part of the external affairs team, because I feel like it's really valuable for both employees and the company to see what's happening out in communities as well, and to hear from national groups. And finally, I think another important thing is coming together across communities. You can also help companies figure out strategies, right? And set goals. Like, for example, at Facebook, since 2014, Facebook started publicly sharing diversity metrics and sharing plans to better support communities of color, right? That include women, members of the LGBTQ community, and obviously communities of across, Black, Latino, API, Native American. And increasingly, those goals get more demanding, right? Get higher. And that's great. It's great to see the company turning to now set goals to increase representation in the workforce over a span of specifically 5 years, to goal to double the number of women employees globally and double the number of Black and Latino employees in the US, and to have at least 50% of the workforce comprised of women globally and underrepresented minorities. So those steps have been taken largely thanks to the leadership of a lot of the folks that we're talking about across communities.
That's great. Big goals, and incredibly important as we think about just the direction of this country and where we need to go, and really, again, bringing in the potential of the entire community to be engaged in every aspect of our economy, of our country. One question one conversation that often comes up in Latino and Latina circles is this idea of imposter syndrome. And it's brought up in a lot of different conversations. And I just want to get everyone's thoughts about that. Like, how do you deal with it? Do you have it? Do you not have it? How do you think about this within our community? And Mercedes, I'm going to give you a shot at going here. And I think it'd be interesting to hear. I'm just getting a few questions on this again. And so I'm like, let's just address it. Mercedes.
I think everybody has it at some point. It's difficult for somebody to say, I know everything and I know I'm in the right position and this is what I should be. And no, if you're humble, if you're smart, and if you're real, yes, you will at some point feel that. Actually, a very dear colleague in my team just wrote a piece on the imposter syndrome. It was awesome. And and I think we need to live with that. If you, I heard somebody said, if you don't, if you are concerned about having the imposter syndrome, is because you're good. The day you don't even think about it is that you think that you know it all. That's not a good thing either, right? So yes, I think it's important to remind yourself, I deserve to be where I am. I have worked and done all of these things. And this has been my journey. And this is why I'm here. It's not just like magic that somebody say, okay, come here, sit in this desk and this is your new position. No, there was a process to get there. So I think that's something that will be with us all the time. The important part is not to get stuck and for not to let it diminish yourself or feel less than anybody or feel insecure about it. Just say, okay, let me remind myself of all the things that I have done and how hard I have worked. So I think that helps a lot. And I just wanted to chime in on something about the coaching and supporting, especially young Latinas and young girls. I think it's our duty. I see it as a duty. We have to do it, especially those of us that have had great opportunities to move into another country and work and learn and be supported and all of that. I think it's our duty. For me, I have several young people that I coach, girls and boys, and I feel it's an honor first, and secondly, it's a duty to pay forward. Or to pay back, all the good things that you have had the opportunity to do. So I am also involved with several organizations that sometimes give me the opportunity to talk to 7-year-old girls, for example, or college students. So I love that part. I enjoy it so much.
Thank you, Mercedes. Careless.
I was laughing as you asked the question because I myself have asked. I asked a professor once, and this is in a leadership program just a couple of years ago. So this was recent, exactly 2 years ago, right before COVID. I said, I'm worried that am I good enough for this role? Do I have the right qualifications? Can I move to the next level? Have I reached a cap? Very much struggling with that imposter syndrome. And my professor just said, if you're worried about the imposter syndrome, you're not an imposter. So for anyone worried about, do they have the qualifications? Can they do it? Are they an imposter? The answer is so simple. You're not. If you were an imposter, you wouldn't worry about it.
I love it. I love the clarity of that. Zarya, do you have anything to add in this category?
No, not really. I think again, this ties, I think it's been said, but it ties back to what I said a little bit earlier about we're so worried about what others need and want and giving that will often block out, wait, am I getting everything I need and I want, right? Like, how am I developing? And so sort of inverting the thought, like, of course I'm qualified, I'm here. Now, what do I need to continue to grow and to give back, right? So I think that's a good trick, I hope, to sort of invert the thought process when you start getting those feelings of, that we all get. Absolutely.
Yeah, I always think about one of the things I always think about.
Sorry, I was just saying that's so powerful because, you started, Amanda, the conversation on, we started talking about likability and then this imposter syndrome, and they're so interconnected. And I don't know for Zarya or Mercedes or Amanda yourself, you're so incredibly successful, but for me personally, it's not that I've completely stopped doing any of these, kind of just like habits of the likability trap. It's knowing and realizing when I'm doing them so I can pull back from the behavior. So when you get senior or become more senior in your career, it's not like any of these habits completely go away. It's being able to recognize when you're doing them. And I'm sorry, I cut you off, but I just thought it was so important for people to hear that it's not like all of a sudden we stop doing all these things and you almost like, wash yourself off these habits. It's that you're able to then recognize when you fall into these traps and pause yourself.
That's exactly right. Right. As we move and learn, you kind of do go, wait a second, I've been here before. How did I manage it? Because it doesn't go away. For me, like that idea of imposter syndrome, I often actually think, man, if my abuela was doing my job, she'd just kick butt. And that is my DNA, right? And it like moves me into how did I, when those ideas started to surface, how did I make sure that they didn't hold me back? But how did I use sort of the learnings, who I am, my history, my experience, and where I come from to actually supercharge that very moment? So you're right, Careless. It's a journey, and we're like consistently learning and growing from that.
And Amanda, you might recall, there's a say in Mexico that says, no soy monedita de oro para caerle bien a todos. So of course, there's going to be some times that you concern, oh, somebody didn't like this, or I'm not going to be liked by everybody. My mom always tells me that. So what? You're not a gold coin that everybody would love. So that's what you need to think about. Do your best and don't hurt anybody. Be the best you can be, but you are not monedita de oro.
I hope people are writing down these lines because I am loving them all across the board. So I want to take some questions from folks that we're getting. So here's a question. What was your primary motivation for seeking a position in leadership? And what role does your heritage play in your leadership style? Let's go to Zarya.
I guess I'll stick with this role of leading the ERG because I think what attracted me to that was, again, it's just sort of something I need to do no matter what context I'm in or where I'm working. I feel like it's just so important to work to advance our voice, right, wherever we are, because as we've all said, and we were just talking about this, it's so needed. And especially in my sector, right, it's really important for products, to shape products, not just to shape policy, but to just shape so many aspects of culture, really, not beyond the business. So I just thought it was so important to try to be a part of that effort and connect the dots and be helpful to the extent that I can, right? Bringing in whatever it is that I bring to the table to support the teams that are doing such wonderful work internally. So for me, I think it's that. Yeah.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it's more being ready all the time for what can come. I wouldn't say that in the times that I have been in a position where I'm promoted or moved to another area, that I was 100% pursuing that. I was
Yeah.
just ready and had my ears and eyes open and made sure that people knew that I was there and that I would be interested. It came up. And sometimes I had like 4 or 5 things open that potentially, could be great for aligned with my skills and my experience. But then I trusted that the best that was for me, that's the one that happened. And that's how it was. It was when they tap me in the shoulder and say, hey, what about this? Would you like this position? Like, absolutely. What do I need to do?
Yeah,
And I think another.
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, I'll just chime in one more thing. Mercedes just gave me a great thought that came to me from something that I've lived through too. When you see a gap or you see a need, don't be afraid to speak to. Again, talking about like, don't be afraid to speak to it and express how you can fill that or fix it or address it. Because I've had definitely opportunities where the role sort of was created because I suggested it, right? I wasn't afraid to say, hey, I see a need here. Have we thought about this? And then that becomes my role. So would encourage everyone to do that too.
Yeah, partly, Zarya, I'm thinking about your nonlinear path. And I think for me, this sort of is connected to that, which is when I've looked at moments in my own career and going, what's next? The big question for me is, where can my skills right now make the biggest difference as I think about the future of this country, of this community, et cetera? And being in tech nonprofit now, largely the draw is that I think it will shape our future. And when you look around and say, where are the Latinos and Latina voices? And man, we need more of those there. Or earlier on in my career, when it wasn't as much in politics or campaigns or policy, maybe that's it. And so for me, at least, it's actually been very critical to positions of leadership in thinking about how are we shaping it, not just for my own kids, but future generations in a world where we're beginning to see those numbers rise as you think about 18 and under. And if all of us on this call and all of us who aren't paying attention, we're going to end up having a world that isn't quite right for all of those kids that are growing up if our voices aren't at the table. And on that note, one of the questions that has come up is, how have you seen your organizations supporting families, supporting moms, supporting just families and personal life, being able to both have work-life balance? Careless, do you want to start out?
Yeah. So, supporting of families is so incredibly important for us to keep women in the financial sector, women working. And when I talk about supporting families, to me, and I am a mother of 2 young boys, it's not only supporting mothers that are, raising children, but also being able to support, associates that have aging parents or aging grandmothers that they still take care of. So ways that company do that is, I'm fortunate to work at Capital One, whose maternity leave policy is extraordinary, but also has policies that accommodate to, if you have someone that you need to take care of, because we need to think about, and especially particularly to the Latino culture, about how our aging society matters and what we do to take care of them, and how Latinos feel a very specific commitment to that. Me personally, I feel the weight of my family, I always say, on my shoulders. And I don't mean that as a bad thing, but I have a responsibility. We talked about like what encouraged you to be successful. To me, I had a responsibility to work hard and achieve because I had the weight of my family. And now I also have the weight of ensuring that I can care for my mother, for my abuelita, and then being part of corporations that give us the space to do that and recognize that that is important is extremely fundamental, I think, to just as America progresses forward.
Yeah, and I can chime in there too. I mean, I feel just so fortunate to be in a place where I've just never been exposed to another company that just had such ample, wide range of support for individuals and families, right? And at every level. And it's not just what's reported. I feel like yes, the healthcare, the medical care, the benefits are often reported, but just the extent to which, besides long, 6 month maternity leave for women that have biological children, there's parental leave across the board, right? So no matter how you build a family, regardless of how you do, you have parental leave. Support for fertility or infertility support, things like that are real challenges that families face. Support across the board for, as you said, all kinds of dependents, as you mentioned, parents, kids, all kinds of leave, right? Paid leave, COVID leave. We were given so much COVID leave, backup care, right? Your nanny or your daycare falls through, having weeks on end of backup care that you could use. I mean, that is what got me through a huge chunk of COVID when, I didn't have a nanny, my kids needed to be schooled. I could no longer manage working full time and teaching full time. It was that backup care benefit that really got us through. So just such a range of support also for legal aid, mental health, all kinds of mental health and occupational therapy and physical therapy, just so many ranges of support that having it all in one place, you realize, wow, how blessed we are. And you just wish, wow, this could just be codified so everyone could partake, right? I had my kids when I was in the nonprofit sector. So I had by law, not even I had 24 hours of sick leave available to me when I was pregnant, right? And that's all I had by law, because I worked for small nonprofits too, which tend to be a lot of the kinds of organizations that we love to support. I was so proud of my work, but it was hard. It was hard to do that, right? And having to negotiate. And luckily, I was fortunate. I had great bosses and board members and leaders with me who absolutely gave me the time that I needed. But I can't imagine if I were in a different situation or a different nonprofit, right? Where maybe the president or leader just either can't do that because of the demands or chooses not to, which happens every day, right, in this country. So it just really hit home to me when I joined Facebook, having already had my kids and seeing these amazing benefits. Yeah, it's incredible, and people are very fortunate to have that. It's a model we should replicate.
Well, I would say, Amanda, same thing with Mastercard. Yeah, same thing with Mastercard. It's amazing company that in so much how they are focused on diversity and inclusion, supporting working mothers, families, like parental leave when somebody has a baby. It's just so unbelievable the how they are so focused on people and making sure that you have everything you need, that you're happy, that you can learn new things. And during the pandemic, it was just like out of this world. It was just some of my colleagues at some point say, okay, this is enough. They don't need to call me every day to ask me if I'm doing well. I'm fine. I'm good. It was like so much. They developed, I don't know how many programs to guide you if you were stressed, if you were sick, if you were concerned, if you couldn't sleep, if you exercises and yoga classes, virtual. There's so many things. If there's one person that said that they didn't feel supported by Mastercard, I wouldn't believe it, or I'll just have a chat with that person, because it was like amazing. And I hope many other companies follow the example like Careless and Zarya have shared about their companies as well, because that's what makes the difference. When I started with Mastercard, I didn't say I'm going to work 27 years here or 30 or whatever. No, it's just because why would I go anywhere else?
Amanda, as I hear us talk, I think the powerful theme that's coming across is beyond the written policy of what maternity or paternity leave is being part of a corporate culture that encourages us to actually take those days, that views it as part of like your corporate culture. So the acceptance of that is what I'm hearing. And that's what's really making companies, that's what makes the companies great. So the acceptance of that, and that's something that we should continue then to advocate for, that this corporate culture is accepting of these things.
Yeah, and when you think about, I'm even more thinking through how we all think about this in a remote environment, right? I mean, I remember being in the Capitol as a chief of staff, running through to find a bathroom because I had morning sickness and I couldn't tell anybody that I was pregnant, right? And by the way, we had to wear jackets on the floor even if they didn't fit while you were going through, because that was the rules on the floor. And I think about how much has changed since then, right? The ability to be home, the ability to like figure out how to have your meetings or not, or just turn your camera off. And I hope that as we think about this next phase, having learned everything we have, not just about being able to do it remotely, but also living in the world with your kids in real time, that hopefully we all change in a way that is even more leaning into the moment and learning what did work. How do we share what worked and best practices here? And so I think the opportunity is right, so long as Careless is saying, the spirit is there of a corporate culture that says we want to figure it out for working families, because it's important to us as a company, it's important to us as a country, and that's really exciting. So as we go to the final closing question for everybody, in closing out this panel, here's a question I'll ask everyone, and I'll start with Mercedes and then Zarya and Carellis. Given this discussion, or just bringing your own lived experience, what is the one takeaway you want to leave everyone who's tuned in today?
I would say work hard in becoming the best version of yourself and don't take anything for granted. The world changes so much that one day you can be up there and some other day you can be in another different place. So be appreciative and thankful for what you have. Never stop being yourself. Sometimes we need to adapt to different environments and things, but our essence and who we really are is sometimes what people really like about us, even though we don't believe it. So I would just say that, be the best version of yourself and keep working every day for that, to be the best.
I would say similar, but I would say don't lose sight of how important it is to be really deeply in touch with yourself and your needs. So I would say make sure you're over communicating both internally with yourself, constantly checking in, as well as with others in your day to day. I think that over communication is a good thing, and it's going to set you on the right track with yourself and with others.
I've about 5 years ago, I was in a role that was highly analytical, and I thought that, okay, well, I need to pause my speech and I need to rethink on how I send emails. And what I really learned is that adaptability does not mean changing who you are. You have received and gotten into the position you are being who you are. And then the two things that I'll leave everyone with is ask for something. Ask for one thing today. It could be a small thing. But continue to ask and advocate for yourself. You are your greatest advocate and you cannot forget it. And then the second thing I'll leave you all with is we have this extraordinary opportunity to reimagine and rethink the way we work. And I think we all will be part of that rethinking, that reimagining. And I think we can come up with much better ideas and much more creative ideas than the way we've been working in the past, because I think the future could look really bright with all of us putting our minds together.
Yeah, and as I think about this panel, this moment we're in, these voices and questions that we all talked about today, I'm left with the idea that, Latina leaders, there's not enough of us. But if we take the time to not just get to know each other, but learn about the history of Latinas before us, there's a lot of lessons to draw out. Not just the path they had to pave and what they did in the tough times to get there, but as I think about where we are going now, it is, I think Mercedes said, our responsibility to hear that, to take it all in and to pave that path with what Carellis is saying is like, be bold, be risk taking. And with Zarya saying it doesn't have to be linear. It could be zagged, and that's okay. We can zigzag and still make our way there. And so I think my advice as we kick off this conference and get the chance, all of us, to be at this table, is to remember that lean on the experience that, folks who have paved the way. There is some rich experience and know what you bring to it too, because there's a whole generation out there of folks who are under 18 that are relying on us, but who will be talking about this path, who will be living in the foundation that we have set. And so it's just really exciting to be with all of you and to remember that none of us are walking alone, that we're all here. And I look forward to seeing how not only folks on this call move and advance in their own careers, but how folks who are tuned in today reshape the world we live in. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm not sure who I hand over to it, but just thank you. This has been a great start to a week.
Thank you so much.
Dafya.